Today, Common Home TV comes to you from a Lumad displacement camp in Mindanao in the Philippines. Most Westerners know Mindanao as a do not travel zone, as earlier this year, 4 Islamist groups have joined the banner of ISIS. Underreported in most mainstream media outlets is the plight of the Lumad people. This report will look at the issues surrounding the Lumad people, as well as speaking to those advocating on their behalf. Perhaps a good place to start is looking at a timeline of the spate of recent killings of Lumad people.
Ang katong namin sa Manilang Bayan na ginapatay gid mismo ang apang uyuan nga naa sa basagan o giadtuan gid mismo gisudlan dito sa balay gipusil gid dito sa atubangan sa iyang mga anak nga si Dato Manero Landay o si Alibando Tingkas ang gimapatay diya mismo sa atubangan sa mga ginikanan o uyuan ug sa iyang pamilya atubangan. Gani sa dito sa kuan.
Okay, first is that my uncle that was from Basgan.
Yes.
His house was raided and he was shot in front of his children, in front of his uncles, in front of his parents. So.
Compounding the suffering of the Lumad people is that the evacuation camps in which they are held are not entirely safe. Today we're recording from the Haran Center, which is operated by the United Church of Christ in the Philippines. On July 23, 2015, more than 500 policemen and government agents forcibly entered the Haran Center in order to force the Lumad to return to their homes. The event left 17 Lumads, including a tribal elder and 2 police officers, injured. In order to better understand who are the Lumad people and the challenges they face today, I spoke with Brother Carl Gaspar. Carl Gaspar is a Redemptorist brother and anthropologist who works on the island of Mindanao.
I was born and raised here in Davao, and here Davao, which is part of the mainland of the island of Mindanao, there is a very sizable part of our population who are indigenous peoples, and they're called in our own language Lumad, and they are quite a number. There are easily about 40 ethno-linguistic tribes that are here in Mindanao, and you either have those who have embraced Islam and those who continue to practice their indigenous belief system, although some of them have also since embraced Protestantism or Catholicism. It's about 10 million in terms of actual population in the entire country, and even more, and certainly 60% of that are in Mindanao. Ever since I was in college, I had begun already to be very interested in this particular field, partly because I grew up with them. I was very much exposed to the realities of indigenous people since they are here, everywhere in Davao. And once I began to really understand the whole dynamic of indigenous culture, not only was I fascinated about the richness of these cultures, but I also realized that there is still so much of the richness of the cultures that which need to be preserved, protected, because the fact that we have become so westernized, while there are some advantages to that, there are also reasons to believe that part of our soul disappear, when we reject parts of our indigenous roots. There's been a whole range of engagement that Redemptorists in the Philippines have had in the past so many years, vis-a-vis the indigenous people, and especially the Lumad here in Mindanao. Recently, the most dramatic would have been the whole phenomenon of the killings of especially the leaders of indigenous communities, where there has been a major conflict between the armed forces of the Philippines, which is of course the military arm of the Republic, of the state, and the rebels, especially the New People's Army, which is the communist arm, and are fighting to overthrow the government. So you have two forces here among our society. But unfortunately, the arena where the confrontation of the two forces have been taking place is in the uplands because, of course, the rebels hide up in the mountains where there are still remaining forests. And this would be the landscape, which is like the ultimate place now where the Lumads continue to reside because they're being displaced from the lowlands and they are forced to go up to the uplands. So here is where you have a situation where on the right, the military forces, and on the left, the rebels would try to really find a way so that they can have some influence on the indigenous people, including recruiting from among the young people of the indigenous people to take up arms, either to be part of the state paramilitary troops or the rebels' armed group. But of course, the majority of the people are just caught in between. Now, one of the reasons why also there have been this particular reality is that it is also in the uplands where the natural resources are present. And as the Philippines is opening itself up to more investment, one of those that are really aggressively penetrating the uplands are mining corporations. Because it so happened that in the uplands, there is a lot of evidence to show that mining resources are available. And so as mining firms are penetrating the area, they rely on the state military to protect them, as well as also employ their own armed guards. And as they penetrate the place where there is the rebels, naturally you have that whole encounter. And given that the insurgency is very alive, the government will also have their counter-insurgency. And as a result of that, when they suspect that some of the leaders are supportive, if not sympathetic to the rebels, they will just arrest them and kill them. So this whole phenomenon of killing Lumad leaders have really been taking place for quite a number of years. And it came to a head recently because of the aggressive mining exploration. The Redemptor, especially our conference in the north, especially Baclaran, took this issue very aggressively because a good number of Lumad people knew that the only way by which they can attract attention from media and from the state agencies is to go to Manila, since, you know, Manila is center of communication, information, and where the governance is also able to be sympathetic to those that are able to rally or demonstrate in the streets. So hundreds of them went to Manila around the time when the APIC conference was in progress in Manila. And they were being pushed out of this public place that they were supposed to use for their public demonstration. And our conference in Baclaran, sensitive to the plight of the poor, made this initiative to bring them inside the compound of the church as a way of protecting them from the harassment of the military. So that has been one way by which church people, including the Redemptorists, have tried to respond to the plight of the Lumad. It has been very clear to us, especially since Vatican Council, that the mission that we conduct, and these include, of course, our popular missions among the indigenous people, is not for the purpose of proselytization or to convert them even with certain force, no? Whether this is by gentle persuasion or the use of financial resources. So there is no intent at all to convert them into Catholicism. In fact, among the indigenous people, the first inroads have been with Protestant missionaries. So a sizable number of them are already Protestants, and we respect that. And we do ecumenical work with them. We have ecumenical prayer sessions, and we collaborate in regard to these sort of projects that create betterment of their lives. So certainly there is no force at all used for proselytization purposes. So in other words, our commitment to indigenous people is very much from the perspective of the gospel, you know, giving food to the hungry, water to the thirsty, providing land to those that are being displaced from their land, creating spaces where their dignity is respected by those that are in power. And hopefully, together we journey in such a way that the sense of community that is there, has always been there, it continues to be nurtured and nourished, and that they see in us, as missionaries, people who do show concern and care for them, and that they can consider us as their brothers and sisters who might be able to respond in whatever way we can. And usually these are really little acts of mercy and compassion. No?
Unfortunately, indigenous communities around the world are at the forefront of resource exploitation, from Western Australia to Northern Canada. With increasing pressure on indigenous communities for market economies, coupled with the threat of climate change, it is becoming harder and harder for Western nations to ignore the issues facing First Nation communities.